The sun had barely dipped below the horizon when Kate received the package. It wasn't unusual for her to get deliveries at the office, but this one was different. It was the shape of a gift box, wrapped in deep red paper with a black satin ribbon, a stark contrast to the snowy streets outside. No return address. No name. Only a single card attached, the handwriting neat but curiously angular. To Kate, with all my love. Happy Valentine's Day. X. The note felt strange in her hands. The elegant handwriting seemed too pristine, almost too perfect. As she stood there, staring at the box, a sense of unease crawled up her spine. She had no idea who X was, and she couldn't remember giving her address to anyone recently, at least no one who would send her a gift like this. Her heart thudded in her chest as she placed the box on her desk. It was so beautiful, so carefully wrapped that she couldn't help but wonder what was inside. The paper gleamed, reflecting the weak office lights. She hesitated. There was something about the box, something that unsettled her. A tap on the door interrupted her thoughts. Kate? You all right in there? It was her colleague, Sarah, peering in with a friendly smile. Kate smiled back, though her unease remained. Yeah, just got an odd gift. No idea who it's from. She nodded toward the box on the desk. Creepy, Sarah said with a laugh. Maybe you've got a secret admirer? Kate chuckled, but the laughter felt hollow in her chest. She could still feel the eerie chill that seemed to radiate from the box, seeping into the room. Sarah eyed the gift with curiosity before stepping back. I should get back to work. Don't let it freak you out. I'm sure it's harmless. Kate nodded, but her stomach twisted as Sarah left. The office was quiet now, with only the sound of the occasional car passing outside. She stared at the box for what felt like an eternity. It didn't seem normal, at least not in the way a Valentine's Day gift should. It felt too purposeful. Too deliberate. Finally, against her better judgment, Kate stood up and walked over to the desk. Her fingers brushed against the smooth surface of the box. The ribbon was easy to untie, slipping loose with little resistance, revealing a second layer of plain brown paper beneath it. She peeled it back, her heart racing. Inside the box, nestled carefully among soft tissue paper, lay a small, intricately carved wooden heart. The craftsmanship was exceptional, so much detail. It looked ancient, like something from another time. But there was no mistaking it. The heart was undeniably real, and its edges were worn as though it had been handled for generations. She picked it up, feeling its weight in her hand, and immediately felt a strange warmth radiate from the object. For a moment she simply stared at it, hypnotized. Something about it made her feel connected to something she couldn't explain, as if it held a hidden memory that she couldn't quite grasp. Then a cold breeze swept through the room, though the window was closed. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up. That's when she noticed it. There, at the center of the heart, was a faint mark. A symbol. At first it looked like nothing more than an engraving, a simple swirl that Kate couldn't make sense of. But when she held the heart closer to her face, something more became clear. It wasn't a swirl at all. It was a face, tiny, almost imperceptible. The features were hollow, like a person carved from smoke. A mouth. A cold, vacant expression. Kate's fingers trembled as she put the heart back into the box, and the moment her hands released it, the room seemed to grow darker. The air grew thick, heavier. She glanced around nervously, and for the first time she felt it. A presence, something invisible but undeniably there, hovering just out of sight. A voice whispered in her ear. Low, raspy, and strangely melodic. Don't you want to know what's inside me? Kate jerked back, her pulse spiking. She spun around, her eyes wide with panic, but there was no one. No one in sight. Her throat went dry. The room was empty, but the weight of those words hung in the air. The voice came again, this time louder. Don't you want to know? Kate staggered back, her hand shooting to the wall for support. The room seemed to close in around her, suffocating her with its oppressive silence. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Her heart pounded in her chest like a drum. She turned back to the box, her mind racing. The gift. The voice. The face on the heart. Was it a prank? A joke? No. Something deep inside her knew this wasn't just a prank. There was something far darker at play here. The voice came again, this time inside her head. The heart calls to you. The ghost calls to you. You open the door. Now you must finish what you started. A chill coursed through her veins. She had to get out of here. The office. The city. Anywhere but here. But her feet didn't move. The words, the call of the ghost, held her in place. As she stood frozen, paralyzed by fear, the lights in the room flickered. One by one they sputtered and went out, leaving her in the dim glow of the streetlights filtering through the blinds. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to stretch and grow, curling toward her, reaching. Kate? The voice echoed again, clearer now. It came from behind her, but when she turned, she saw nothing. The voice wasn't in the room anymore. It was inside her mind. A persistent whisper, relentless, demanding. Come closer. Finish what you started. Her hand was no longer trembling. It was steady. Steady as she reached for the heart again. The moment her fingers brushed against it, the temperature in the room dropped so suddenly, so violently, that her breath turned to mist before her eyes. She couldn't stop herself. The heart pulsed with warmth, an unnatural warmth, and the whispers grew louder. The sensation was overwhelming. She leaned in, unable to resist any longer, and pressed her ear to the cold wood. A voice that was both ancient and familiar whispered, "You will never leave. Not until the task is complete." A blinding flash of white light filled her vision, and she staggered back, disoriented. The room snapped back into focus and the shadows receded. But the feeling remained, the lingering presence, the sensation of something cold and watching. Kate blinked, shaken, her mind foggy from the surge of energy. Her hand still gripped the heart, but now there was no denying it. She was no longer alone. Something had entered the room with her. She staggered backward, bumping into her desk as the room darkened once more. But this time she was ready. She threw the heart into the box and slammed the lid shut, her breath ragged as she stepped away. The whispers, though muffled now, continued to hum through her mind. "You're not finished. Not yet." Kate took a few steps backward, her head spinning. She had to get out. She had to get away from this. But when she turned to the door, she froze. In the reflection of the glass window, standing just behind her, was a figure. A woman. Pale, gaunt, her eyes hollow and dark. Her lips moved, but the words were silent. Kate's heart stopped as the figure reached out to her, a finger pointing toward the box. The figure opened her mouth, and this time Kate heard her voice. "You open the box. Now you must see me. You must finish the task. There is no going back." A blood-curdling scream ripped from Kate's throat, but no sound came. The figure stepped closer and Kate's world went black.
Kate's eyes snapped open to find herself lying on the cold floor, gasping for air. Her entire body felt as if it had been drained of all warmth. The air around her was frigid, the darkness consuming the room, but she could still feel the faint pulse of the heart, the one she had placed back in the box. Her vision swam as she tried to sit up. The whispering, the haunting voice, still echoed in her mind, a constant, suffocating presence that would not let her go. "You must finish the task." Kate rubbed her forehead, trying to dispel the lingering dizziness. She was no longer in her office. The room around her was unrecognizable, crumbling walls, faded wallpaper peeling at the edges, and shadows that seemed to pulse with life. The familiar office building had vanished, replaced by an old, decaying house. The stench of mildew and old wood filled the air, and she could almost taste the rot in the back of her throat. Her pulse quickened as she stood, her body trembling from the cold and the fear. She reached out, running her fingers across the wall for support, but as her hand touched the peeling surface, the wallpaper fell away, revealing something far more disturbing. A series of strange symbols had been carved into the wood underneath, each one glowing faintly in the dim light. The symbols weren't just random markings. They were deliberate, ancient, like they had been there for centuries, waiting for someone to uncover them. As she stared at the marks, she felt an odd sensation of recognition, like she had seen them before. "You know what you must do?" The voice whispered again, now so close it was as though it was inside her own thoughts. The pressure in her head was unbearable, but she couldn't escape it. The whispers grew louder, clearer. "The task is to see the truth. To see me. To open the final door. Now that you've opened the box, the door is unlocked." Kate's heart pounded in her chest. She couldn't breathe. The walls around her seemed to close in, suffocating her with their claustrophobic embrace. There was no way out, no way to escape the presence, the voice, the task that had been thrust upon her. She backed away from the wall, her eyes scanning the room, desperate for something, anything, that could offer an explanation. But the more she searched, the more she realized how hopeless the situation was. There were no windows, no doors, only the endless, shifting shadows. Then she saw it. At the far end of the room, A door, dark, heavy, ancient, stood alone. It was different from the others, as though it had been placed there by design. A faint, unnatural light leaked from beneath it, casting an eerie glow across the floor. Kate felt a pull toward it, an irresistible urge to step forward, to cross the room and reach for the door. She had no choice. The task had already begun. The heart, the box, the symbols, this was all leading her here, to this moment. Her feet moved before she could stop them. Every step felt like a struggle, as if the room itself was trying to hold her back, to keep her from moving forward. The closer she got to the door, the colder the air became. It burned her skin like ice. Each breath she took felt like inhaling shards of glass. She reached the door and paused, staring at the glowing light beneath it. Her heart thudded painfully in her chest. She could feel the presence of the ghost, the force that had been speaking to her, pressing against the door from the other side. It was waiting. With trembling hands, Kate reached for the handle. The moment her fingers touched it, a shock of cold electricity jolted through her body, and the door creaked open, revealing what lay beyond. The room was dark, shrouded in a thick, impenetrable mist. The only thing she could see clearly was a figure in the center of the room, a woman, her back turned to Kate. Her hair was long and wild, her clothes torn, but it was her eyes that held Kate's gaze. The woman's eyes were black, hollow, like two voids that could swallow everything in their path. A deep sadness radiated from her, mixed with an overwhelming, suffocating sense of emptiness. Kate's breath caught in her throat as the woman slowly turned to face her. Her face was pale, ghostly white, and as she stepped forward, Kate felt an icy gust of wind brush against her skin. "Who are you?" Kate whispered, her voice barely audible, the words caught in her throat. The woman didn't answer immediately. She stepped closer, her gaze never leaving Kate's, until she was only a few feet away. Then, her lips parted, and she spoke. "I am the one who was forgotten." Her voice was chilling, hollow, but there was a sense of resignation in it. Like she had been waiting for Kate to open the door, waiting for her to walk through it. "I was lost," the woman continued, her voice growing softer. "And now you are too. Just like me. Once you open the door, there is no return. You will be tied to this place, tied to this task. You will see the truth of what you have done." The woman's eyes burned into Kate's soul, as though peeling back every layer of her being, exposing the deepest parts of her fear. Kate stumbled back, but the woman moved with her, never breaking eye contact. "The heart is the key," the woman said, her voice now a whisper, almost too quiet to hear. "The heart has awakened something. It has brought me here. And now, you must understand why." Kate couldn't look away. The words felt like they were pulling her deeper into something she couldn't escape. The task, the truth, the door, everything was coming together. She had opened it. She had brought the ghost here, and now she was part of this twisted, eternal cycle. The room around her seemed to pulse, as though the walls themselves were alive, breathing with the woman, with the force that had been awakened by the heart. Kate took a step back, but the woman stepped forward, blocking her path. "No," the woman whispered, her voice becoming sharp, commanding. "You cannot run. The door is closed. The task is yours. And now you will see the truth." The woman's hands stretched out toward Kate, and suddenly, a vision flooded Kate's mind. A scene from long ago, a forest dark and dense with trees. A fire burning in the center of a clearing. A group of people gathered around it, chanting, performing a ritual. At the center of the group was the woman, her face young and full of life, her eyes no longer hollow but full of love and longing. Then, the vision shifted. The fire flickered out. The people disappeared. The woman fell to her knees, her hands clutching her chest in agony as something dark and cold surrounded her. Kate gasped as the image faded, leaving her breathless, dizzy. "You opened the door. Now you understand," the woman said, her voice low. "I was once like you. Chosen. But I was deceived. I became the very thing I sought to escape." Kate's eyes widened in horror as the room seemed to warp and twist around her. The walls closed in. The floor shifted beneath her feet. The woman's figure seemed to dissolve into the shadows, only her voice remaining. The heart is the key. The ghost is the price. And you? ***. The voice trailed off, leaving Kate in the suffocating dark, alone with her thoughts. You cannot escape. The voice whispered one last time. The task had only just begun. Thank you for following Kate's journey into the unknown. For more spine-chilling tales, be sure to subscribe to the channel.